けど久しぶりにバイブス上げてこう우리 선택이 ritsuko!
Feliz Jueves, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Eva Month on the Castaway Anime podcast. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
And today we're talking episodes 9 through 16 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. But first, if you enjoy the podcast and want to hear more of our objectively correct takes, registered trademark, then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode of Castaway Anime. Now, on to the show.
Alright, so last time we were exceptionally positive about the show, saying it was just
we were glazing
good.
it.
Absolutely glazing it beyond belief. So, has anything changed? Has it, gasp, maybe fallen off? Has it become mid? Has it become too pretentious for its own good? What do you think?
Here's my scathing review. I can no longer say that there are, it's a 100% all good episodes of Eva. There is one half decent episode, and then the rest are still good.
Alright, so I'm actually curious about what episode that is.
The recap
so
episode.
I'm of a okay, well, there we go. That was the most likely candidate, but yeah.
The one that wasted the most time.
Well, I just skipped through the first half of it because I
Same.
immediately
as soon as I
looked
realized
up.
it was as soon as I realized it was a recap, I was just like, okay, skip forward a minute, missed nothing, skip forward a minute, okay, 10 minutes. We've gone 11 minutes into the episode, and now we're on the original content.
Yeah, so I have a slightly different stance, although still similar, in the sense that it is getting less consistent, I feel. Where the first 8 episodes, consisting of the first block we covered, were all like peak kinography. I think in this block it does waver a little bit towards the mid-section of the block, where it feels a bit too Angel of the Week for my taste. Where, you know, the emphasis seems to have been placed too much on the angels themselves and just the mission to beat them in certain episodes. And it's not bad. It is still very much good, entertaining content. It is fun all the way through. Well, I say fun, it's Eva, so it's depressing fun, but it's still fun. And actually, a lot of these episodes aren't even that depressing, which is very much the intention within the context of the grander narrative. And seeing the angels defeated is still interesting for the most part, but, no, I will say, it ended on a high note, so I'm probably less harsh than I would be had we ended on episode 14, let's say. Because the last 2 were bangers. I think episode 9 was also a banger. Then the rest of them, they're a bit weaker than the first block.
I feel like I enjoyed every single episode in this block, aside from the recap one, which even then the original content was, standard quality Eva content, just less of it because we had to dedicate half of an episode to recap. But everything else I enjoyed. We've definitely strayed away from the more I guess it's fair to call it unpredictable direction that the first 8 episodes contained. Like, I didn't realize that the classmate characters would be be as involved as they were in the story. But now it feels like we've begun to phase them out and phase in Asuka and Rei, especially Asuka, who's now a member of the main cast. So I feel like we should open up the conversation just because we left off on Asuka's intro episode, which in hindsight was a bad place to cut off the podcast, but we had to cut the episodes up into a manageable size somehow. So we touched on Asuka's introduction last week. So this week, now that we've really gotten a good feel for Asuka, what do we think of her?
I definitely like her, and especially episode 9. That's probably my favorite episode of the block, in part because, like, every shot from that episode was peak. Like, I was screenshotting them constantly. So, episode 9 is all about Asuka and Shinji learning to fight together, and instead of fighting with each other, because, Asuka, very headstrong, very difficult to get along with.
Very prideful.
Yeah. very obsessed with being better than Shinji. And she has trouble syncing up their movements together, whereas he can just do, he can, push down on the circles on the mat, like, perfectly in sync with Rei, whereas with Asuka, they just completely desync and aren't able to do it together. And at first she's blaming him, but then she realizes, oh wait, he can do it fine with this other person.
Yeah, I love how they flip the script there, where it's like, oh, Shinji's not as experienced an Eva pilot as I am, so he's holding me back. And then Rei just comes over and, without even like any effort, without even any practice, just immediately starts syncing together. And it's like, no, Asuka, the problem is that you're not willing to match your pacing to the less experienced one. Therefore, you're the one holding each other back. And that like gets her fucked up in her head.
Yeah, like even near the beginning of the episode, there's this shot where Asuka, she sees Rei reading a book on a bench, so she walks up to her, and it's almost similar to the way the show frames Gendo Ikari as being physically above Shinji in episode 1. But in Asuka's case, she's like using the landscape around her, this little, I'm looking at the shot right now, this wall with, like bushes atop of it, and she's standing on top of it, but like a crowd of people are behind her wondering what the fuck she's doing. Indicating that she's not really supposed to be this far above people, that it is conspicuous, whereas when they frame Gendo, he feels completely natural within the landscape he's in. So that's just something that I noticed and thought was interesting. But yeah, she's like finding every excuse possible to be above people, and so then over the course of this block of episodes learns to gradually learns to respect Shinji more as a person.
Yeah, well, speaking of the directing, I'm slowly getting won over to the, popular idea that Hideaki Anno might actually be one of, if not the greatest anime director of all time. Because, my god, the good directing has not let up in the slightest.
I think it's let up a little bit. As in, there's not as many mind-blowing shots, but you can still find them aplenty. Like, it is not... It is heads and tails above the rest of the competition.
He's definitely been toning down the more, like, jaw-dropping, like, eye-catching, iconic imagery, but he's, in its place, he's, pulling more, directorial tricks, like how he paralleled what's her name, Misato, looking at Kaji and Ritsuko through the glass and breathing heavily, leaving that reflected steam on the glass, and we could see him in the reflection. And then later that same episode, we see Shinji looking at Asuka through the glass of the convenience store freezer door, and then seeing his reflection while looking at her, paralleling the two like relationships that are going on. I was like, oh, I caught that, Mr. Anno. I caught that indeed.
I didn't even catch that. But what I did catch, and what would be rather difficult not to, is, and this is pretty in-your-face directing, but when Asuka is laying down next to Shinji in that episode, and he's, looking her up, he accidentally hits the fast forward button on his music player, and the music starts fritzing out all over the place as he's just stuck there, like, staring
completely
at her.
matching his state of mind at the time. Like, holy shit, a hot girl has just sat down next to me in falling asleep, half naked in front of me, and within kissing distance.
Yeah, and then he does actually try to kiss her before, in her dreams, she remembers her mother, who has... I don't think they confirmed this, but I think it's very heavily implied that she is dead right now, and she's remembering the memory of her mother, and it just hard cuts to him on the other side of the room.
Yeah, and then calls her, "You're just as much a kid as I am, Asuka." Even though he's the one who just tried to kiss her in her sleep.
Bro is fucked up.
That whole scene was great. Also, everything about Asuka is a great addition to Shinji's role in the narrative, and their dynamic is they have my new favorite relationship in the show, where it looks like the show is kind of pushing them to be like a potential couple. They're saying there's the possibility that it can happen, and Asuka's definitely in her own tsundere way, as the grand progenitor of the tsundere trope, is like definitely into Shinji in her own way. As much as she like call him an idiot, put him down, she's always like getting his attention whenever she can. Like when she's there, they can't go to the school trip at Okinawa, so they're just going to go diving at the nerve base and go swimming there. And when when Shinji's doing his studying and she's like, "Hey, check out my swimsuit. What are you learning about? Thermal expansion, thermal dynamics? Oh, that thing where like hot things get bigger and cold things get smaller. I wonder if my boobs would expand if they got hot enough." And when she asks Shinji what he thinks of that, he's like, "How should I know, perv?" And then her response is, "Man, you're like no, you're so boring. You're no fun at all." It's like she's literally like extending the door for you, bro. She's like clearly like opening the door to be like, "Hey, do you want to like talk at the very least engage in some risque conversations, or like some more like at the very least like locker room-esque talk?"
Yeah, like knowing that Asuka is, commonly cited as the progenitor of the tsundere, the original one, the Adam, if you will, of tsunderes. It kind of pisses me off knowing that the complexity behind her and Shinji's relationship just became so distilled, so just turned into shit.
Wow, Crunchy,
so
you're telling
anime.
me a bunch of hack writers copied a very popular, very famous, very successful thing, but then didn't copy the nuances, the subtle nuances of it, and just made a shitty, half-baked imitation? I can't imagine that's inconceivable.
Because Asuka is in this state of like simultaneously respecting Shinji and then totally not 1 second later, where she's like trying to.
It's such a great dynamic where she's she's prideful in herself. She wants to be the best. She wants to be better than Shinji, but at the same time, she doesn't want to be so much better than Shinji that she's keeping company with a loser. Like if someone's going to surpass her as an Eva pilot, they better be like the greatest human being to ever live. So that way, it's not some beta male like Shinji. It's some sad, lonely cuckboy who's sad all the time.
Yeah, and like, in episodes like episode 10, I'm fairly sure it was, where, yeah, it's episode 10, where they, the rest of the class is on vacation, but they're staying behind, and they end up fighting this Eva in a volcano. And Shinji, like, goes down to rescue her into boiling hot lava, even though he doesn't have the heat suit on, I'm pretty sure. And it's like this huge, moment of like, "Oh, you literally saved my life. Wow." And she begins to respect him, and she feels she has this debt to him that she needs to pay back, which she does in the power outage episode, which I'm pretty sure is, literally the next one, where there's another angel that they are fighting. And this one is dripping acid down as they're trying to get into, dripping down a hole that they're trying to rise up. And so Asuka, puts herself in the way of the acid, burning her suit so that Shinji and Rei can set up to fire at the angel. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm paying you back, man." And it's just, like this push and pull of having this respect for him, but then at the same time having both this feeling that he is a loser, but also this spite towards him, in the sense that in the final episode of this block, episode 16, Shinji gets to a point where his sync rate in statistics with his Eva are better than everyone else's, which was being built up to for quite a while now, of Shinji like, oh, he's lagging behind because he is the third child and not the second or first. but he's catching up. He's a prodigy, and this is the point where he overtakes her, and she like puts him out to be the one to fire at the angel and whatnot, like taking the lead role in their quest. Like, not because she respects him, but because, like, out of sheer rage of just, like, oh, what, you're so much better than me? Okay, prove it. And she's, like, almost wanting him to mess up, and then she does, and she's like, well, partially because he went off the script of the mission, which I'm sure we'll get into, and she starts berating him after he's gone, like, hi, you let just a little bit of success get to your head or whatever.
And then based fucking Ray like stands up to
that scene was so good.
Yeah, and I love the lighting in that one where like Asuka's face is like completely drenched in shadow.
Except for like the blue of her irises. Was that Ray or Asuka that they highlighted the blue? Oh, it'd be Asuka because she has blue eyes, obviously. Yeah. Why did I think it was Ray for a second? Maybe it's the blue hair confusing me. But no, Asuka with her irises, that shot looks so fucking cool. By the way, I committed a sin because a video was rendering in the background. I ended up watching the final 2 episodes of this block on my phone. I did feel physical pain knowing that I wasn't seeing it on the biggest screen I have. But I had to do what I had to do.
I had to do that. I had to do that last block when I started my full-time job because it was cutting into precious Castaway Anime time, the wage cuck society life. So I had to watch 1 episode during my lunch break in my car. And yeah, I definitely felt like I was getting cucked. It's also hard to take notes at the same time on a phone as opposed to having 2 monitors up your computer.
Yeah, well, for me, it isn't too much different because I only have 1 monitor, and so I'm not, like, switching between the 2 to write my notes. But it was sad knowing that I was getting the lesser viewing experience. But yeah, as Ray says there, and this is this works into Asuka's character as well, where Ray's like, do you just want to prove to others that you're the best? Like, are you piloting the Eva so that others will praise you? And Asuka's like, nah, fam. I'm doing it so I can praise myself. And it's like implying this level. Well, first of all, I don't even think Asuka's being entirely truthful that she doesn't want other people to recognize her greatness.
Of course, she wants other people to recognize her greatness. She literally in the episode that introduced her, she expects like all the other. She expects Shinji to like bow at her feet and be like, "Hey, recognize like who the superior pilot between the 2 of us is."
But it also betrays this sort of self-loathing within her head, where part of the reason why she wants this praise is because of this deep-rooted insecurity that may be even, tearing her up inside even more than we previously thought, where it's highlighting that negative voice inside her, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, maybe she's got like a big case of imposter syndrome.
Maybe.
I love how I'm trying to remember which episode it was. Oh no, my point. I feel it actively slipping away from me in real time. I need to quick go over my notes. Oh, here it is. I love how Asuka, the back and forth between what she wants and what she says and how she really feels, it's once again the core ideal of the tsundere that Anno was going for, and how deeply layered it is versus all the different hacks that copied him without understanding it and made shallow imitations. My favorite is when because we find out that Asuka's a genius. Like, even though she fails, the only reason she failed her tests in the Japanese school is because she hasn't memorized the Japanese language yet, which she's able to speak. She just doesn't know how to read kanji. But she is she's German. Is she also like part American?
I think she's just German.
Okay, because I could have sworn I read online that Asuka was like German American. Is Asuka?
I mean, she might be.
American?
That has not been indicated in the show so far, as I recall.
Asuka is a native of Germany, being raised there, though her nationality is American. She was born to an
Okay.
American father, and her mother was German Japanese. So maybe that'll get touched on in the show. But what matters is that she's bilingual. She's multilingual. She can speak German and Japanese. I even love how I think I forgot to mention this point last episode, how she's apparently implied to be able to control the way she thinks, because when she's in her Eva with Shinji, Shinji's brainwaves are ruining her flow because he's thinking in Japanese while she's thinking in German. So she's like, hey, cut that out, Shinji. You're ruining my sync rate. So she has to set, because Shinji can only think in Japanese, she has to switch her mindset to think in Japanese, which I'm pretty sure that's not her native tongue, is it? I assume if you were born in Germany, you are going to be taught German first.
No, Japanese is absolutely not her native tongue, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, obviously, she doesn't know how to read kanji, so yeah. So she's so smart that she, even in this, sci-fi world, she's able to switch the language in which she thinks. Like, how do you even do that? I can't, granted, I don't know a second language nearly as well as Asuka does, but at the same time, I can only ever imagine myself thinking in English. Like, I could learn every other language on the planet, and I'd exclusively think in English.
I mean, I don't reckon it'd be that hard to switch, like, your conscious thoughts into Japanese. But also, I mean, when I saw that scene, I thought they were configuring some setting within the Eva. I'd have to rewatch it to be sure it was her, like, actually switching her mindset to Japanese.
Well, yeah, because the Eva was getting confused because they were picking up Asuka's German thoughts and Shinji's Japanese thoughts, and so that's why...
Okay, duh, obviously she'd also have to switch her thoughts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my bad on that one.
Because, yeah, she's a genius. We found out she's a college graduate despite being 14, so she's a genius. So... with all that, success going to her head, she would make sense for her to think that she's supposed to be, #1 Eva pilot around. But here comes prodigy Shinji, once again, sad, lonely cuckboy, doing better than her. And so she was like, it's the dichotomy of, all right, Shinji, you're a fucking soy boy, you're a loser, you're a libtard, and I want you, if you're gonna be better than me, then you gotta act like a man. I have this line written down. There's nothing worse than a domesticated man, and she says that to Shinji, and is constantly putting him down for, apologizing instantly all the time, like calling it out as a defense mechanism. Based trad wife Asuka?
Actually, it's funny because Shinji's manhood is what she critiques of him, like it's a very recurring thing. And something I noticed is that in episode 16, I'm pretty sure would be the last one. Yeah. So in episode 16, I'm not sure how intentional this was, but Shinji says, like, when he's getting really confident, like, he almost throws her insults back in her face subtly with, oh, I'm a man, I'm going to be the one on the offense taking control in this mission.
I'm gonna show you how it's done, Asuka,
like,
you bitch.
Then yeah, and she has to, like, completely like turn the insult on its head to, oh, well, now you're thinking regressively, even though in prior episodes she's the one saying be more of a man, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, but at the very end of the episode, when they are able to pull Shinji out of not they don't pull him. Shinji escapes because of his own abilities and Eva going berserk. When Rei's already in the room and Misato was like crying, pulling him out of the plug, we see Asuka leaning against the door, and when Rei goes to open it, her head's peeking over the corner because she actually cared about Shinji's well-being that whole time. She was just too embarrassed to, be in the room with her. Very, very cute, very adorable.
Yeah, that episode, like episode 16 in general, was fucking fire. I loved that episode.
Yeah, we'll be able to dive into that one more a little later. I think the last thing I want to talk about Asuka is episode 9. I want to take a deeper dive into that one because I feel like with that episode, the way that they're able to turn the relationship between Shinji and Asuka on its head in just after one episode, because we established they have, Asuka has disdain for Shinji, for being, how is he so cool when I'm supposed to be the coolest Eva pilot in history? And then in episode 9, she's blaming him for their failures to the point where they both get comically owned by an angel so hard they get comically buried, head first like ostriches.
I laughed my ass off at those frames. That was so funny.
The towering, imposing, impressive Evas just getting fucking turned upside down and like K. Rool in Smash Ultimate, King K. Rool, when he grabs you, he throws you down like head first, so just your legs are sticking out. Yeah, it's like that. They got K. Rool down thrown. And so, in order for them to overcome this and sync up to defeat this particular angel, Misato tasks them to come up with an attack plan while to the beat of a particular like opera song. Which, the opera scene by itself is very good. I kind of wish it was more, like, actually timed to the music instead of the music being more of a backdrop to the 62-second sequence. But it's very cool to see the Evas moving in perfect sync, and then that iconic double kick.
Yeah, so the entire... something I've also realized as I'm watching this, Eva, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but it was just on my mind when you mentioned the, fight scene to the music. Eva fights have felt very different, specifically ever since Asuka showed up. You could say she even changed everything. Wink, wink.
I mean,
nudge,
the show
nudge.
does feel like it's taken more of an action-focused approach at times. We haven't completely stepped away from the more cerebral, thinking man's mecha anime, even down to the point where there's an episode where there's no traditional action at all. The most exciting thing happens when a angel virus is infecting headquarters and taking over the Magi supercomputers that run all of NERV.
Yeah, but what I mean when I say that everything is different is that the fact that that Eva even can become an Angel of the Week show for a certain period of time, like that was something that had to be worked for, because at the beginning, Shinji was not in the mental state to be able to do that, where angels were defeated over longer spans of episodes, and he was regularly running away from, well, not regularly, he only did it the one time, but still, was ready to leave at any moment. And it's in part like his development and also Asuka being there to form the trio, the titular trio, that we can actually have an Angel of the Week show for a certain period of time. And that is interesting to me in the metatextual sense of like, oh, most shows would start off with this, but with Eva, it by necessity has to be something built up to in order, in order for the show to get to that point, because at the beginning, Shinji is just not ready at all.
I don't know how much of a popular or unpopular opinion this is within the Eva community, but one of my favorite episodes of this entire block was the Blackout episode, where there was an Eva attack, but because a blackout occurs throughout all of NERV and takes out all the power, we have different groups trying to accomplish different goals. Like Asuka, Shinji, and Rei are trying to get into NERV and navigating its through these underground tunnels, while also trying to Asuka's trying to take charge as a leader, while Rei is like very focused and like she'll follow along because she, I think, just isn't like designed, whatever happened to her, she does not have like the mental capacity to like take charge of a situation. She's like a naturally programmed follower, which might be more true than we're letting on, because of one scene in particular in this block of episodes where she's like encased in this test tube beneath a giant brain that Gendo's looking over. But I guess we're gonna explore that more come the final block of episodes. But the dynamic that they have, it's almost kind of like a slice of life before they get into the robots again. Just seeing their personalities go back and forth. How Asuka's, the brash, aggressive one, Rei's the focused, quiet one, and Shinji is, the mediator, bitch boy between the two, and but is able to meet both of them on their own terms.
Yeah, and just the scenario of the blackout, I think, does a lot to keep the episode interesting. Because, Eva doesn't let itself get too stale. It does change things up all the time, where, once again, there's even an episode, like you said, where the angel takes the form of a computer virus and something corroding metal. And our main trio is basically absent for most of it.
Yeah, I love that the show is able to not only like focus on its side characters when it needs to, but also it's not afraid to be fun. Like that one shot in the Blackout episode of Asuka commanding Shinji to crank the valve to open the door, and just the composition of that shot of Asuka, standing with her legs spread, hands on her hips, standing in that iconic Asuka pose. Rei just, standing solemnly while Shinji's like taxing his entire body just to crank the door slowly open while the three of them are standing before it. That's really fun. You get a feel for each one of their personalities from that one shot alone. And also it's in a Maxor video where he just says, dubbing over Asuka's voice line, saying, "Shinji, crank that Soldier Boy," and just plays Soldier Boy as he turns the crank.
That sounds fucking hilarious, goddamn.
Yeah, and then even big Mr. Serious, Mr. Sinister Gendo Ikari. I love how the other side characters are like, "Oh, look at Gendo, look at Commander Ikari." Not even like the heat is getting to him, and he's like maintaining that same iconic folded hands, leaning against them pose, but he's actually got his feet in a bucket of water to keep himself cool. And then his like commander buddy's like, "The water is lukewarm," so he's like, "Yes." Like even he's trying to beat the heat.
Yeah, so what did you want to talk about next? Because there's plenty to go on. Like Shinji and Misato are the two other characters that come to mind that that I would have talking points for in this block.
I got one last thing I want to talk about Asuka, and that's the de facto roommate couple relationship they formed throughout episode 9 as a means to, complete their plan of working together to fight the angel. I love how throughout the montage, we get so many fun, iconic shots of them brushing their teeth together, butting heads. Me when I want to watch orange, but my bitch ass wife wants to watch blue.
Dude, I popped off when I saw that. That is amazing. And speaking of iconic shots, there's I feel like we have the same shot in mind.
I was gonna say the one where they're both listening to the same
yep,
Walkman.
Same shot I was gonna mention.
And they're tapping their fingers on their knees together, like just and like they're so focused. They're leaning like up against one another with their eyes closed, but like they're not reveling in like any sort of intimacy. They're just like do it. It's like a job to them.
Yeah, that entire episode is great. It's about, like we said, Asuka learning to work together with people, and that lasts throughout the remaining episodes to wavering degrees.
And I feel like it did actually like push their relationship in a more positive aspect, to the point where,
oh, for
before
sure.
In episode 8, Asuka was like getting upset with Shinji when he poked his head out over the stairwell where she told him to wait when she was changing into her plug suit. Been like, "Oh, you're such a weird, horny pervert," to the point where she now is like has no qualms talking to Shinji, immediately coming out of the shower wearing nothing but like some towels, and is not only the first time that she's worn nothing but towels in front of Shinji and having like no issue with it.
Yeah, wow. I wonder if she maybe is infatuated with him. Who could say?
I don't know, she was pretty adamant about, hey, don't cross this door, Shinji, while I lean over and have my tits like sagging down where you can see through the cuff of my shirt.
Dude, actually, that I'm glad you reminded me of that, because that was something I noted. Of course, that sounds so sus when I put it like that, but no, the thing is, Asuka is only sexualized in this show when it's like Shinji is having the horny thoughts as well, where you see that shot, but it isn't pointless, because then it cuts to Shinji and we get to follow where his eyes are going, which is down her shirt, because that shot was literally in his perspective, essentially. He does in fact see what we see. So it just goes to show you can do you can make even these shots that would be like pointless fluff fan service nonsense in a shit show, but in this show, an actually good anime, it serves a purpose and is characterizing and is one of the, yet another piece of the puzzle to Shinji's developing sexuality and interest in the women around him and learning to sort those feelings out, and Asuka's as well, as we see plenty of times.
Watching this whole show, and it was this moment in particular that finally got me to realize it, was that I now see just how much of an influence Chainsaw Man took from Evangelion, because without getting into spoilers, because I'm much looking forward to seeing this happen throughout the continuation of the Chainsaw Man anime.
Oh, okay, so this is like deep into the manga then.
Yeah, then this extends no further than part 1. It does not touch part 2 at all, but the relationship between Shinji and Asuka reminds me so much of Denji and Power. Because right now they have a they're pretty much like siblings at this point. Let's just say that as the manga goes on, that relationship is going to develop.
I see.
And that's all I'll say on that. But now, knowing what I do, I won't, burden you with this knowledge. He who's is able to keep himself spoiler free. But now, like having that knowledge, and now that I'm actually watching Evangelion, where Fujimoto likely pulled some of it inspiration from, seeing it all play out in real time, I'm like, oh, I get it now. I'm literally the Danny DeVito, oh my god, I get it meme. I'm like seeing the reverberations throughout anime history that Evangelion has caused.
This is like completely derailing the topic again, but I remembered this as you were talking about that. The kiss scene between Asuka and Shinji is legendary. Like, it is hilarious. Because so Asuka, in line with this show's theme of sexuality and the way the characters are dealing with it, Asuka's randomly like, yo, Shinji, kiss me. Like, at first he doesn't hear it, but then, eventually she tells him, and Shinji, decides to give it a shot. And at first, she leans in, then he's, she tells him, okay, stop breathing, you're tickling me with your breath. And so she grabs his nose, shuts both of his nostrils, and then kisses him. And it's like a cut of Pen walking through, and Shinji's hand is slowly growing blue, and he's dying due to lack of oxygen.
Yeah, they kiss for at least 30 seconds.
It's a long time, and then immediately afterward, Asuka makes a show of gargling water in the bathroom because it's just so gross to her. She has to clean her mouth now. Apparently,
yeah, she can't.
According to the show,
let him think that she enjoyed it.
I imagine she got more enjoyment from it than she is letting on, but that's just my speculation here.
And we see Shinji, he is a little embarrassed by it, but he's more so, oh my god, I can finally breathe again, thank God. But yeah. He feels emotion from it, but he doesn't get too within the weeds of it, because once again, he is not within his own feelings. He is too in his own head and too much of a sad boy to really be able to explore, even have the ability to begin to explore what these feelings are. And once again, to bring up the Chainsaw Man comparison once more, is there do we know of a scene in Chainsaw Man between Denji and Power where one of them has a sexual or / romantic encounter with the other that doesn't really go the way you would think it would, despite it being like very sexual / romantic in nature? And
wow, no, none whatsoever. I cannot recall.
Yeah, it's I'm seeing the reverberations, man. It's making me appreciate both Evangelion for its influence and Chainsaw Man for its inspirations all the more.
Yeah, and actually taking inspiration from the trope and doing it right instead of just butchering it. I presume I don't have as much context into you, as much context as you into what Chainsaw Man does with its influence.
I'll only say this last bit just to avoid this podcast evolving into a Chainsaw Man podcast. What Fujimoto does, not just with the Denji and Power aspect of it, which is also great, but I love how he's able to, take it as a basis, but then is able to expand on it via Denji's sexuality. Because, unlike Shinji, Denji is a very horny motherfucker. The difference between Denji and Shinji is that Denji is like, even though he says he wants, to feel up some boobs and to have sex, he's like, when he is offered those things, or like given the opportunity to like have those things, he realizes that, getting the short-term gratification is not like worth it in the long run. Whereas you could find much more satisfaction and contentedness in, like long-term building to things like you actually care about that actually feel special. So that's why the scene is great where when Denji feels up, this is the power of Chainsaw Man. When Denji feels, oh fuck, what's her name? How am I blanking on her name? Makima's tits, and then he's like, holy shit, I get it now. It's got to be like special. It's got to be with someone you really care about. It just can't be some nickel floozy. He's like, I'm only going to kiss and I'm only going to have sex with Makima. No one else will cut it for me. And even then, that ideal will get challenged with the upcoming movie, which I'm looking forward to. But that's what I appreciate about Chainsaw Man. Fujimoto was able to, not only take the basis of Evangelion's relationship between Shinji and Asuka, but expand and add on to it in his own way, which is the mark of a good writer.
Yeah, so is that about all you wanted to say about Asuka?
One more thing. Inflation!
Inflation!
Yes, Asuka did kickstart many horny weebs his horrible inflation fetish, so actually Hideaki Anno is the scum of the universe and deserves no forgiveness. And we should burn him at the fucking cross for the innumerable sins and monsters that he has created.
So true, so true. Now, I want to dive into Shinji, if you're okay with that. Because,
yeah, we can talk about
I've gone over it a little bit, where he's now at the stage where it can become sort of like an Angel of the Week show. Because he's able to be chipper enough, able to fight the angels enough and not constantly want to run away, that he can, now put his life on the line with relative confidence. And it eventually gets to his head. He, well, also, something I noticed, like the fact that he's even arguing with Asuka so regularly is like just a sign of how much he's opened up and how how much Asuka in particular.
Block 1, Shinji would have just sat there and taken he would have been like, yes ma'am, yes ma'am.
Yeah, like that's another reason why Asuka's introduction is so integral to the development of Shinji as a character, where it's like, okay, now he has someone who, it's not like Rei, who will barely speak to him. It's not like Misato, who will occasionally do things that he finds silly or stupid, and, he'll make fun of her for it a little bit, but at the end of the day, isn't, nearly as combative and off the walls as his dynamic with Asuka, where they're, arguing and quipping with each other, and Shinji's fighting back, and that helps him, I think, open up a lot as a person and be able to, just be more vocal and be more tethered to the people around him in his life. But he gains all this confidence, and that sort of bubbles over in episode, I think it's the latest one, episode 16. Yep. And so Shinji, we already went over this. He now has the highest sync rate with the Eva, and he takes charge in this mission to the point of disobeying, not following along with the plan. He's just like, hey, yo, I can shoot this guy. I can get him. And then he ends up getting the rug pulled under him in a near literal sense, where the ground turns to shadows, and he starts sinking. Listen, it's either you piss in the sink or sink in the piss, and Shinji he sank in the piss, let me tell ya.
Boy got sent to the Shadow Realm, Jimbo.
He did get sent to the Shadow Realm, and he is stuck within this realm with no human. This is such a terrifying concept, by the way. This is like the just on a conceptual level, this is the most horrifying episode of the show so far, where he's stuck in this alternate dimension without human contact, knowing that the Eva is slowly shutting down around him for a period of, I think, 16 hours.
Yes.
And there's one shot of the LCL just all brown with these little specks in it, and it looks so horrifying to be in. And he's I'm playing it right now, in fetal position in the cockpit, just saying, I'm tired. He barely has any energy. Whatever confidence he has, I am super interested in seeing what happens to it now that he has been put in this situation that to most people would be the worst day of their life. To anyone in this situation, this is your worst nightmare. If a real life person was put in this situation, they would be shell shocked for probably the next 6 months afterward. It is rough.
Yeah, no one, wants to die alone, but I think even fewer people, if they had to die alone, would choose not to die alone in a, alternate dimension. I'll dumb it down even further than that. No one wants to be isolated in, a room, a claustrophobic room, for, their last few hours while, the oxygen is slowly taken away from them over the course of 16 hours. Where they could do nothing but contemplate, their impending demise. But then, Evangelion adds on a touch of existential horror and almost kind of Lovecraftian in a way, where hey, not only are you going to be forced to grapple with your impending death, but also your mind is going to be put into this alternate pocket space where you're going to be conversing with your own self, a different perception of your own self that is constantly berating you and pointing out all the things is true but you don't want to hear.
Yeah, so this sequence is
it's
so
just like
cool.
Persona.
I don't know that reference.
The Persona series.
I don't know anything about the Persona series other than that it exists.
That is astounding to me, considering that you are in the anime community and online in current year.
Dude, I pride myself on being spoiler-free on damn near anything. I do not know the first thing about... It's one thing to be
spoiler-free, it's another thing to not know what goes on in Persona.
I do not know what goes on in Persona.
You're not even familiar with, the concept of Persona, the basic premise?
Nope.
But yeah, that's wild to me.
What can I say, man? I'm uncultured.
Yeah, true.
Or I guess
this is
culture
the first time that we're finally
avoidant.
watching we're watching Evangelion, one of the most influential anime ever.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen enough Digi videos to have heard the whole spiel about yourself being the version of you inside everyone's minds plenty of times by now, which is an interesting concept, and we're finally delving into the weeds of that with equally like schizophrenic visuals and just this. God, it's such a surreal feeling scene, and the context of it being Shinji trapped in this alternate dimension. It's Kino. It's kinography.
I especially like how they portray, at first they portray them talking as wavy horizontal and vertical lines, but then as the self becomes more conceptualized visually, it's represented by them talking opposite sides on a train, and it's Shinji is talking to like a blacked out, almost like he was blacked out on a photo version of his younger self. That is the perception of self that he sees.
Yeah, and the gist of it is Shinji is sort of running away from the reality of things, and I quoted this line because it's so fucking Kino. There's no way you can live by linking just enjoyable moments.
I also
like
wrote
a rosary.
that down.
Because I've done that. I've done literally that, where like in my darkest moments, like, okay, so one of like the most horrifying moments of my life. So at the time I was keeping a diary. I still technically do.
I guess is it time to massively overshare, or are you about to get therapeutic on Castaway Anime?
No, I'm not oversharing. Don't worry.
Okay,
I'm keeping it,
I was gonna say,
relatively
I'm not
anonymized.
oversharing. Anyway, one of those traumatic, horrifying moments in my entire existence.
No, it's not like that. Like I realized, but no, what I realized was that like I had looked over the past like month of entries and been like, I was just like desperately clinging on to every positive thing that happened each day because I'm like actually fucking miserable right now, and like I've just been tricking myself into believing that actually things are getting better and life is happy. And it's like, so when I hear that line, it's like, oh yeah, I've been there. I know like beat for beat what Shinji, well, not literally beat for beat, but I know what Shinji is feeling, where it's like, oh, my father praised me once. If I just do well in the Eva, I'll be able to get that again, and then he'll love me.
Yeah, like I can cope with the years of abandonment and neglect that he showed me, so long as I could just get him to occasionally say good job once in a while, right?
No, that's not how it works. Because at the end of the day, their dynamic is completely fucked up, and just clinging on to those small moments, it's just feeding the beast. It's just going to make things worse in the long run. And Shinji has to find the strength within himself to be like, no, you know what? I don't have to rely on my father's praise anymore. I can be self-sufficient. I have these friends who do love me, and I need their praise instead, because they actually do care about me. And Misato's more of a mother figure than Gendo ever will be to me. Stuff like
this
that.
This whole thing reminds me of genuinely one of the most like actually life-changing things in quotes I've ever heard of. From Bo Burnham, from one of his best works that he's done, From God's Perspective. Have you seen Bo Burnham What?
I have seen Bo Burnham What? It was many years ago, but I have seen it.
Okay, so I think From God's Perspective is one of his best works, and the two lines that stick out to me the most are the idea where he gets towards the end of the song that all these different groups in the world that are arguing over different beliefs and faiths, and that these disagreements have caused them to come to such chaotic bloodshed, whereas like no one and yet no one entertains the thought that maybe God does not believe in you. Like you pray the whole line, like, you pray so badly for having knowing any day might be the day that you die, but maybe life on Earth could be heaven. Doesn't just the thought of it make it worth a try? I love how that encapsulates the idea of it's not a bad thing to like believe that there is an afterlife, believe that there is a heaven, that, we don't just, fucking cease to exist, everything goes dark and the end of consciousness sets in. But is like, it's important not to get so hung up on that belief to the point where you neglect the ability to, like, make the most of your time on Earth while you have it. And then the line that always stuck with me the most, though, is at the very last one, where he's, from God's perspective, he goes, God says, I'm not gonna give you love just because I know that you want me to. If you want love, then the love has gotta come from you. Which is like, that line is stuck with me, because it's true. Like, no matter what, it is impossible for a human to love anything else if they cannot love themselves first. Because if you can't bring yourself to love yourself, you can't have love for anything else. Because you are your own self. You are your own existence. If you can't bring yourself to show any kind of compassion or appreciation for that, then anything you try to apply to anything or anyone else is meaningless or hollow.
Yeah, and Shinji, like, God, episode 16 is so good. Like,
yeah, Shinji needs to learn to love himself. He can't escape into his father's approval, because once again, we'll call back to Denji and Chainsaw Man. You can't go for the short-term satisfaction. You need to find yourself in the long-term satisfaction, the contentment of working for something, and then when you finally get it, it's something, the real shit that actually matters. And what matters to Shinji right now, what should matter, is not his bitch-ass, bum-ass father's approval. It's his own approval, that he could say, I'm Shinji Ikari, and I like myself, and I like that I am alive, and I like what I'm doing these days. And when he's able to do that, then he'll be able to escape the, prison that he's put inside his own mind, and avoid talking to his own self and be like, it's okay that I don't know how to swim, that's a natural thing. I love that they can still, even in these existential horror scenes, can still inject a little bit of comedy.
Yeah, so I feel like you've summed up very well the gist of what point Shinji is at with that whole spiel. So, unless you have something else to say about Shinji, I have some stuff to say about Misato.
I feel like we can end the podcast by talking about stuff with Misato and what NERV is doing as a whole, because their dealings are coming to light. I'm trying to find if there's any other thing in my notes about Shinji. Nope. Just the only other thing I have is the one scene where Shinji is like dreading, and this will make for a nice segue to talk about Misato, because this is another good line in the show that I took the time to write down, because it's true. When Shinji, in episode 15 or 14, I forget exactly which one, but it's the one where Shinji has to go talk with his dad and visit his mom's quote-unquote grave.
Oh yeah, that was 15.
Okay, yeah, so it was 15. Yeah, so he does it with that. He does it every apparently every so often with his father, and because his dad says, it's important to, Gendo is of the opinion of, like, there's some things that are worth leaving in the past, like they're not worth remembering, but there are some parts of our lives that we're never able to forget and never should forget, and your mother taught me that, Shinji, and that's why we're here. Even though this grave is a facade and her body's not actually even here, it's just like a tombstone over an empty lot. It's important to keep her in our memory, because she mattered. To what extent she mattered to Gendo and to even Shinji is still a little bit unknown right now, and it looks like from the outset of what we know so far, Shinji cared about her way more than Gendo did, but maybe that'll change.
Well, Shinji, he would have been, so let's see, she died in, oh god, what year was it? I'm getting the year 2004.
He was younger than 10, I think.
No, he
'Cause,
was
I
way
think
younger than 10.
Yeah, because shortly after, I'm trying to remember the timetable here. Shortly after she died, Gendo abandoned him for those 3 years, right?
That sounds about right, judging from the flashbacks. But Shinji also said, like, straight up, I don't even remember her. So it was extremely young when when she must have died.
Yeah.
Because if it
So
was
and then it's that.
2004 and he's like 14, so I'm assuming it's 2004, just because that's the year that's coming to mind. And if that is true, he would have been 4 when she died.
Yeah. So yeah, that checks out. And so yeah, the whole reason they're there is to do that. And when Shinji, he's both dreading and looking forward to it because he has mixed feelings about his dad. He wants his approval, but at the same time, he hates him for abandoning him for so long. And so Misato tells Shinji, like, listen, Shinji, my boy, my true son, you can't run away. It's running away is only gonna like keep the pain going even further. You have to take that first step towards working towards your dealing with your issues, and it's important that it's not just about taking the first step. It's that after you take the first step, you got to keep walking.
By the way, I just want to mention Gendo, like, they're at the gravesite, and then Gendo, this fucking, like, helicopter, I think, maybe not a helicopter, like some kind of flying vehicle, just comes down from the sky, and he, what a bastard, bro.
Yeah, immediately,
like,
flown
they couldn't
away
from the graveyard.
They couldn't even like drive together to the fake gravesite. And they couldn't even like leave together at the same time. He was like, well, time is money, and I'm a very busy man, son. So see ya. Like, and I forget what exactly Shinji says to him at the end. Something about like what's going on in his life recently. And all he has to say is like, I see. And then leaves.
Yeah, he's the most bastard dad in fiction. Well, probably not the most, but on an emotional level, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, but Misato is making a strong case for being the best mom in all of fiction, kind of.
If you ignore all of the things that make her irresponsible, like drinking first thing in the morning, yeah, I guess she's generally, she at least cares. And that's better than
maybe
Gendo.
That takes away from the mom points, but it definitely boosts her wife material.
True. By the way, I'm still going strong on Misato. I saw you Asuka posting in chat the other day.
I've got a new wealth of Misato screenshots as well. Don't you worry. Like, if I had to, continue to pick who the best girl is, I would still say it's Misato. I will say I'm having more fun with Asuka as a character than I am with Misato. But if we're judging them based on who would I want to be my girlfriend/wife, Misato all the way.
Absolutely. So yeah, Misato has like half the characters in this show have either father or mother issues. By the way, because it's
I wonder if
Hideaki
Anno has any kind of parental
I feel like I've heard
issues.
about that before. I feel like that is true.
Thinks someone doth project.
Because yeah, it's like Ritsuko, yeah, her mother was also a scientist highly involved in it's also Misato's dad. It's always the same explanation too, where they get too busy at Nerve and then they just stop paying attention to their family. And in Misato's case, her mother divorced him eventually, and to his dad, it just came out of the blue. He was confused. But
yeah, in
even though
case, her mom became a supercomputer.
Yeah, so a bit of a different story there, but nonetheless, Misato has that same complex about her dad as Shinji does his, where her dad saved his life. And this is something interesting to me, because however distant Misato's dad was, and however strange their relationship became, he still was willing to risk his life for her. And I imagine that is, on maybe some slight level, true with Gendo as well, where I'm sure he has some tiny smidgen of care within him for Shinji, some level of still thinking of him as his son, but he is so emotionally distant, so callous, and so unable to, so uninterested in other people that it just comes out to be this extremely twisted relationship. I think on some level there might be. But
okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he literally, isn't there a moment in episode 10 where they're trying to get the Eva out of, not the Eva, the angel that's incubating within a volcano out of the earth? When isn't there a line where it's like, hey, by the way, if you guys fail and the angel starts to hatch,
that there is
we're
that
going
line,
to
true.
Yeah, we're gonna bomb you. We're gonna drop bombs down the hole to make sure that the angel does not awaken and cause the third impact, and you may die in the process. By the way, this the protocol was approved by your dad, Shinji. So father of the year.
You aren't misremembering. Father of the year, yeah, truly. So, methinks he is quite a bit more of a bastard than Misato's, but nonetheless, Misato's. He risked his life for her at the very last moment. Well, rather, instead of risking it, paid with his life in order to save her by putting her in the, the little tube, the
plug.
I'm forgetting the exact, the plug. That's the term for it. And, she survives through that, and that's why she has the scar, which is cool as hell, by the way. Every time characters have scars, I am so down for it.
True.
Yes. Want to make a good character design, just give them a scar. But anyway, this all comes to a head in episode 15, where she is with Kaji, getting super drunk and whatnot. And she eventually just completely breaks down in front of him, and the floodgates come open, and she's basically calling herself a coward and a hypocrite, where she's spent all this time in her life running away from her feelings about her dad, where, for a long time she hated him, but then he paid the ultimate price in order to save her. So it's like, okay, well, what do I even make of this anymore? And so she decided, all right, I'm just gonna get enthralled with my work. But she still ends up working at Nerve, which is where her dad worked. She ends up dating Kaji, who is a man who she says is significantly similar to her dad in terms of personality. Well, I'm assuming it is based on personality. And so she ends up dumping Kaji, specifically because he reminded her too much of her dad. And she just continued running away.
It's like the male version of an Oedipus complex, where it's the fatherhood that you're attracted to.
Isn't that literally Oedipus complex?
I thought that was exclusively for mothers. I thought that was exclusively for mothers.
I thought that was for fathers, where Freud, I'm pretty sure, theorized like, oh, well, blah blah yada yada. Point is, I thought it was for fathers.
No, it's Oedipus because the Oedipus complex.
Let me look this up. I need to get
I remember
this right.
it because
Freudian theory. Young child typically around the age of 4, unconscious sexual desire for the parent of the. Okay, so it's for both.
Oh, okay. I was just.
Oh
gonna
no!
say,
Wait, no. Okay, Electra complex. There we go.
Okay, that sounds right. Because I was gonna say
it's changed for Oedipus complex applying to both, but it was originally Oedipus.
I'm reminded of another Bo Burnham lyric where he just says, "Oedipus was the first motherfucker." So that's how I knew it was related to moms.
Of course, it's a Bo Burnham lyric that reminds you of it.
I mean, he is the GOAT, so
he is in fact the GOAT. I need to watch more of his shows.
Yeah, so does everyone. But back to Eva. Yeah, the whole scene where she breaks down, like calls herself a conniving bitch, like just really lays into herself. That scene was really good. Really, I'm still so surprised to this day that Rei and Asuka were like the big meme, the big debate, Rei versus Asuka. I know we talked about this last week, but I'm still so surprised that Misato is like the secondary main character of Evangelion. Like behind Shinji,
Yeah,
it
that's
is
still
Misato.
true.
Like Rei hasn't taken up any more prominence than she has. Asuka is cementing herself as like, yeah, Rei and Asuka are the third and fourth primary characters respectively, but yeah, like Misato, it's no one has challenged Misato for her role yet. I thought she was gonna be prominent at the start, and then as we started to get more into angel battles with our main trio of Shinji, Rei, and Asuka, Misato would start to get phased out. No, opposite. She has been just as involved.
Yeah, and she's also my second favorite character personally behind Shinji. And yeah, like she's dealing with a lot of the same issues that he is, which is why she ends up calling herself a hypocrite, because she has the same father issues, but also the same self-loathing.
It also, like, I hate to ruin the image of the perfect wife material, but it does, having all of this like within context now, it does put her her tendency to drink heavily into perspective now.
Yeah, wow, I wonder if that's maybe alluding to some kind of unhealthy coping mechanism she has. Ooh, I wonder. But yeah, that scene is kinography. I love it. I love Misato. She's also hot as fuck, but that's self-evident.
Yeah, I want to make her line from episode 16 where Shinji goes, "Did I do well? Did I pass the test, Miss Misato?" And she goes, "Hi, you are number one." I want to make that a ringtone on my phone. Some motivation throughout the day.
Ringtone.
Every time I get a text message, I just Misato reaffirming me that, yeah, I am number one. Thank you, Misato Katsuragi, or however you say her last name, Katsuragi.
Yeah, so also at the end of this episode, we get to learn a bit more about Kaji's deal. Because actually it was alluded to earlier, but he's working for, I'm pretty sure, I have it in my notes, Japan's Ministry of Home Affairs, if I am not mistaken.
I think it's both that and also a cover with I can't tell which side he's like truly on, because like he's definitely in the know more about the Human Instrumentality Project. We're getting little peeks behind the curtain, like every so often, every once in a while, where they don't show enough to show like what the fuck it really means, but are still like adding little bits of like, okay, things are happening. Like this is Nerve's true ultimate goal, because we were told that like at the outset, but they've been keeping the cards close to the chest on what it is. And we know the most information we've got from it so far is that Gendo has gotten his hands on Adam, which is the preservation of the first human on the planet. But also there's a thing called Adam we see at the end of episode 16, which is shown to be a different thing, because like the Adam that we see in episode, was it 8 or 9 that we saw Adam? Like the preservation in the amber. Okay. At the end of episode 8. Yeah, so we see like a preservation of like an angel-esque being within amber. Being, that Adam being referred to as the first human. But then at the end of episode 16, we see Misato refer to Adam as the first angel. So we already know that humans and angels are comprised of like very similar DNA and very similar like base elements. They just have like a slight difference between them. So like, are those two the same thing, and did it grow into that weird thing on the cross that got crucified and impaled with a spear, or is it two separate things? Are they two halves of the same whole? Who knows? But the point is, the Human Instrumentality Project is something big, something secret, something very hush hush, and judging off of episode 8, it seems that Kaji is in on it to a degree, at least more so than Misato. Like, and Ritsuko we see is also in on it. But it looks like Kaji is like both on it with Gendo, but at the same time is like going out of his way to do things to get information on it and then leak it. I guess maybe he wants to make it, public knowledge.
Yeah, and whatever importance seeing Adam pierced with, I'm pretty sure that's the Spear of Longinus that they mentioned earlier, but I can't be entirely sure on that. But it was
I think
pierced
it
with a
is.
spear or trident.
Because the Spear of Longinus from Evangelion is very iconic.
Yeah, and oh god, I had a point, and then okay, yeah, no, I got my point back. So whatever Misato saw was enough for her to go from pointing a gun at Kaji's head to letting him live. So, presumably it is super important.
Yeah, and then we see at the end of episode 16, where after Shinji uses O1 to tear his way out of the angel in a giant shower of blood and like terrifying all those who witness it. Like Asuka's like, wait, that's what I'm piloting? I'm piloting a monster like that? And Misato's like, no, it was Ritsuko who was like, I have never been more scared of the Evas than I have been today. Like, what if they turn against us? They might very well hate us. What,
Dude,
like,
that
what does it all
entire cut
mean?
of animation is so raw. Yeah, so Shinji seems to have some kind of special connection with his Eva, where he's called a prodigy, but also his Eva frequently goes berserk and is able to do things that it normally shouldn't be able to, where in this case, it was completely out of power, but presumably the creature, copy of the first angel, from what we're told, as well as something special that we're not told about yet. Yeah, like the creature inside of it is presumably moving without the need for power to fuel it. So what exactly does it mean? What are its abilities with and without power? Does the creature move independent of the power, but the power moves the mechanical stuff only, which the creature is normally bound to? But for Shinji, in special cases, it can for some reason go berserk. Who knows? Right now, we're just waiting for it to go down, to see how it finishes.
Yeah, and I think that... Do you have anything else that you want to talk about, or are we just about done here?
Nope, I think we got to the gist of it.
Yeah, well, I do want to mention this real quick. Based fucking mom moment when Misato slaps Ritsuko when she even suggests that Shinji is expendable when compared to retrieving Unit 01.
That was so based. Yeah, I loved that moment.
Yeah, and then Misato is saying that oh, I'm gonna chew him out so hard when we save him for blowing the mission like this, and then when she sees him, the first thing she does is just cry and hug him. Yeah, that's Shinji's real mom, baby. I love the found family trope.
And with that, we truly are done. So, final thoughts on this block of episodes? It's still good.
Yeah, it's I'm consistently impressed with how much I'm enjoying the show. Once again, from last week, not to say that I was looking forward to calling it overrated and overhyped, but I'm more surprised that I am, falling into the hype. I'm it's living up to all of the praise and glazing that the fans of it have been showering it with for decades now.
Yeah, you know what? I do still think it is in the running for a 10 out of 10. If we can just close it out, man. You gotta close it out. Please don't mess it up.
Next week we're gonna be talking about the final 10 episodes, episodes 17 through 26. And then the week after we'll be checking out End of Evangelion in theaters. We'll be doing our finale of Eva Month, talking about that movie. That's going to be a very big discussion. Looking forward to that. So yeah, that sounds like that'll bring us to an end of this episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. Be sure to follow along with us in the description for all the shows that we're going to be watching with us. And that'll do her. I'm Neon Manta,
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
and you'll see us next time.